ARE Podcast, episode number 70.
Welcome to the ARE Podcast. Where it's all about encouraging and inspiring you today so you can fulfill your dream of becoming a licensed architect tomorrow. And now your host, David Doucette.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode number 70 of the ARE Podcast, joined by our co-host, Eric Corey-Freed. Eric, how are you?
I'm great. Hi, everybody.
And today we're going to talk about the 2-week retake plan. It's a topic that we hear come up often in our coaching program and in the thousands of candidates that Eric has talked to over the years. The retake is a common topic, and the strategy, and surprisingly how I think lost candidates are to this retake process until they kind of have a plan in place. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start this retake, or the 2-week retake plan. Eric, let's start this off.
So the way most people do retakes is as if it's a total surprise. They go in taking the test expecting to pass. When they don't, they typically have feelings of shock and shame, which are both pretty negative. They try to interpret their score report to read the tea leaves and see if there's any sort of insight they can glean from the score report. There's not much. And then they wait around 60 days until they take it again.
If they take it again, and they might, right. Sometimes they just disappear like I did. I disappeared for 2 years after my first fail.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that they have their first fail and then they're like, and then they say things to me like, maybe I won't be an architect now. Like, how brittle is your dream to be an architect if one little setback is going to like, oh, maybe I'll go into 3D computer gaming or something. It's strange.
Right.
But what most people do is they have this reactionary process. They take a test, they fail, and then they wait around 60 days and they restudy what they just studied. Nothing really changes. And then they fail a second time, and this time their scores have changed because now they're second guessing themselves. They're thinking, well, I had similar questions the first time, and that time I answered A, so this time I'll answer B. Like, they just start moving deck chairs around on the ship, thinking that might do it. And the truth is, you have no idea why you failed. You have no idea which questions you got right and which questions you got wrong. You're not doing anything to improve that situation, and your mindset is still unchanged from whatever you went in with before that didn't work in the first place. And that's how most people do retakes, sadly enough. And if you can't tell from the tone of my voice, I don't approve of that. That's not the right way to do retakes. There's a much, much better way that is also less stressful and ultimately much more successful.
And I think what we hear from candidates who end up joining our coaching program, if they've been at this on their own for a while, is they've taken 3 or 4 exams, and we're like, well, which divisions did you take? That's great. PCM. Okay, what else? PCM. They get stuck on this loop because, I mean, I don't know if it's human nature or what. They just think like, I can't move on to PJM until I get PCM done. Like, it's something, if they fail it, there's something unsettled inside. And I mean, I get it until somebody shows you the light, right? Until somebody shows you the process. It's like, oh my God, that's so foolish to just be stuck on PCM when I could be just keep moving along in my journey, doing other divisions, and then fit that retake in, which is what we're talking about right now.
It's funny because in our group coaching, I start off the group coaching calls every week with the same 3 minutes of announcements. And at the core of that is, if you fail a test, move on to the next one, right? Don't get on what we call the hamster retake wheel, where you're just taking the same one over and over again. Because we meet a lot of people that are like, I've taken... they'll start with practice management. I've taken PCM 6 times over the last 5 years. It's usually something like that. So nothing has changed. Nothing has grown. They haven't evolved. They haven't been able to learn from their mistakes because they're essentially on this retake hamster wheel, just going over and over again, as if it's like like a video game that if they just shoot the button at the right time, somehow the point will go in the goal and they'll advance to the next level. And it's just a completely wrong way of thinking about these tests.
I want to talk about what you mentioned, the switching chairs on the deck, right? Which I think is actually a perfect analogy, because when we, let's say PCM, we're on the deck, we failed, now we're switching chairs, still on the deck. We're on the deck. If we fail, we need to get off the deck. Go somewhere else. Go to the bowling alley. Go get something to eat. Go somewhere else, i.e. PJM, right? Go somewhere else. They're rearranging the chairs on the deck. It's not going to help you. So I just wanted to mention that analogy.
Yeah, but I think the reason why people retake the same test over and over again is because they have this scarcity fixed mindset of, well, if I move on to the next test, I'm going to lose everything I just learned. And first of all, that's not how learning works. If you truly learned something, you don't lose it. You have to stop treating this test like your fifth grade geography test where you had to memorize all the state capitals, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, that. And you're not going to lose it. The reality is, and this is the big headline of this podcast, is moving on to the next test will only help you later with the retake. That's the big headline. So if you failed PCM once, 6 times, doesn't matter. Moving on to PJM will only help you better understand PCM. That's the truth of it.
And also it helps get your time management down. Like you get better at actually taking these tests the more you take them. So that is an inherent part of this process. I mean, maybe it shouldn't be, but it just is, the actual how to take a test, content aside, right? Time management, all of that stuff. So a kind of a quick example would be I take PJM or I take PCM, I fail. Not a big deal because I know I'm taking PJM 2 months later, and then I take PJM, and then a week later I take PCM. Like I just fit it in, and then I jump in on CE. So I think part of the reason that people are getting stuck is they don't have the plan, they don't have the goal. Right. And we say you should be taking 10 exams a year. Just plan on taking 10 exams a year, which is 1 every 2 months. So that's 6. And then fitting in your retakes. Yeah.
Exactly. And then more importantly, you're not going to let a fail interrupt your plan. The plan is I'm taking a test every 2 months. I'm going to get through all 6 in a year. So you know that within a year, you'll take all 6. Now, whether you pass or not, hopefully you do, is up to you. But you know that you're going to be going through all 6 tests in a year. Imagine how much better your understanding of all 6 tests will be now that you've studied for all 6 tests. So pass or fail, nothing interrupts your plan. I'm taking PCM, let's say January. I'll study January and February and take it to the end of February. Then starting in March, I'll study for PJM, and I'll take that March and April, take that at the end of April. And then if I failed any along the way, then I'll fit in the retake in between. You don't need another 2 months to study for a retake, right? You really just need kind of a 2-week refresher to study for a retake. And you can fit that in between this relentless, every 2 months I'm taking a new test. And I'm just going to finish all 6 tests in a year. That's the plan. And also, more importantly, you're not leaving your professional career up to chance. You're not gambling with, well, if I pass, then I'll move on to the next test. Instead, you're following the plan no matter what. And pass or fail, you're moving on.
And that is, I think, what's also important, and as a byproduct of this is just the habit of studying, the habit of making this fit into your life. And that's kind of what we teach in coaching, an hour and a half a day. I mean, we're not asking anybody to do 4 or 5 hour marathon sessions on Saturday or Sunday, and there's no reason for it. And we still give them a day off, 1 day off a week in the study plan. The idea is you just fit it in. It just becomes part of your daily life. And that in and of itself will lead you to success. Just the habit of that, right? Content aside, division aside, doesn't matter. Just the fact that you're showing up and you're committing an hour a day, let's say, 6 days a week to this process, you will get your license. It will happen.
Yeah, it's very doable. And then, like in our group coaching, we've designed the study plan to be very doable for busy people, because the number one thing that we both hear is when people say to me, well, I'm really busy. It's like, oh, really? I've never heard that from everybody I meet. Everybody's busy. You're busy. I'm busy. Every single candidate's busy. That's kind of the point. NCARB's not expecting you to go live in a cabin in Vermont for 6 months while you study alone. They're knowing that you're doing this while you're working a full-time job as an architect, and you're studying, evenings and weekends like everybody else. That's the whole point of it. And so, yeah, you're busy, but so is everybody else. And so we've designed the study plan to be rather doable for people. And then the retake plan is even more doable because instead of restudying everything over again, all you really need to do is think back in your head on the test and think back of what topics came up on the test or what words came up on the test that were unfamiliar to you or you were not that confident on. And we call these fuzzy topics. And fuzzy topics are things where, yeah, you kind of know what they are. You could probably even kind of explain them. But in reality, if you're really being honest with yourself, a fuzzy topic is one that you don't know when you would choose one over another. So, for example, a very common fuzzy topic in practice management is which corporate legal structure do I pick? LLC, S Corp, C Corp? I kind of know what they are, but if I'm really being honest, I don't know when I would choose an S Corp over C Corp over an LLC. That is a perfect fuzzy topic. And that's one that you can then map that out, just make a list of your fuzzy topics, and then go and get clarity on those fuzzy topics. And I really recommend not studying them, but rather my biggest recommendation is go to YouTube, type your fuzzy topic into YouTube and watch some videos. What we have people do in our group coaching is we have them post their fuzzy topics to our Slack channel so we can just give them clarity right then and there on it. But if you're not lucky enough to be in our group coaching, then you can do this on your own by just Googling and YouTubing your way to gain clarity.
Walk me through a 2-week study plan. And, if we're being honest with ourselves, because when we're retaking, we're already in the groove. We're in this process. So like you said, we certainly don't need another 2 months. The reality is for PCM, PJM, and CE, we probably only need a week. PA, PPD, and PDD, yeah, maybe 2 weeks. But you don't need more than 2 weeks for any of the divisions. That's just yourself making excuses. So walk me through what a 2-week plan looks like, what happens in the first couple of days, and then, how do I know I'm prepared by, the end of the last 2 days of that 2-week period?
Yeah, well, in our platinum coaching, we even have a 2-week retake handbook, like a whole plan of how to do that. So I'm just going to follow that. And it starts with day one, the day after you just failed. So the day after you fail, you're going to want to do something, and your brain is telling you to quit. So instead of letting your brain win and letting you quit or letting you put it off for another 2 years, instead, the day after you take your test, what I want you to do is I want you to go through the test that you failed in your mind and then list out your fuzzy topics. You might have 3, you might have 5, you might have 27. It doesn't matter how many you have. And then I want you to schedule your test for 2 weeks from that day. So on day one, you've already set a deadline for yourself that 2 weeks from today, I'm taking my retake. And on day one, I'm mapping out my fuzzy topics. Then the rest of the week, you're going to tackle, 2 or 3 of these fuzzy topics a day. You're going to search YouTube for the topics. You're going to Google them. If you're in a group coaching, you would post it to Slack. Ideally, if you're using our study materials, you'd listen to the audio for that module so you can hear it again, especially the audio commentary is kind of great for that. And you're going to go through that. So that'll be day 2, day 3, day 4.
Let me back up for a second. There's confusion. So the day one is not the day you fail a test, the day after you fail a test. It's the day after you've taken a different division. Now you're going back to revisit this retake the day one, right? That's where we're going with this. So day 4.
No matter what, you're moving on to your next test. So this is after you've taken your now test after that. And you're like, okay, I've got 2 weeks. In that 2 weeks, I'm going to plan for my retake and I'm going to take it. And it starts with you mapping your fuzzy topics and then spending most of that week just tackling those fuzzy topics to gain clarity, to really be honest with yourself of, can I choose between an S Corp and a C Corp and an LLC, right? That's the clarity you're looking for. And then you can retake the NCARB demo exam or our exam simulator within that week while listening to the audio. You don't need to restudy everything again, and you'll end that week with being so much more clear on your fuzzy topics.
And then you repeat it for the second week. And it does mean having a plan and looking at a calendar and just marking out, okay, these 3 fuzzy topics on Tuesday, these 3 fuzzy topics on Wednesday. I mean, it's that simple of a plan, but we have to have a plan. And
very doable.
Very doable. And the biggest thing that I hear too is, hey, I have coming up on Friday, but I don't want to schedule PJM until I, know the results. And the fact is, you scheduling PJM has nothing to do with the results of PCM because you're still taking PJM 2 months later, kind of thing. That's the mindset we want to get out of, thinking our results of one dictate how I'm going to continue in this process, and it doesn't. They're like shooting targets. You just keep knocking them down. And then at the end of the year, after you get your 10 exams in a year, you see how many you have left.
Yeah, everybody thinks these tests are siloed, and in part, they think that because maybe they've been doing these tests since 3.1 or 4.0. They are older versions of the test. Maybe it's just human nature to assume these tests are siloed. In truth, all 6 tests, I would argue, are part of the same continuum. The only difference is you're wearing a different hat. You're playing a different role. So in practice management, you're wearing the hat of the principal. You're thinking like the boss. Your concern is keeping the firm afloat, keeping accounts receivable coming in, keeping overhead low. In PJM, it's the same test, but now you're wearing the hat of the project manager. Couldn't care less about overhead. Now you're trying to get the project out the door with the fee provided. On both tests, you'll get questions around utilization rates, but we make different judgments as a principal versus as a project manager. So it's really about the hat you wear. That's why moving on to the next test only helps you with your retake. These are not siloed tests. They're all part of a larger continuum of you as architect, capital A architect.
Yes, well said. I think just looking at all of this as one process, right? It's not the siloed thing. And again, the content, PCM, PJMC, studying for all of those will help you for each one of those, but also the study habits you develop, you will carry through, and you continue to refine your study habits, and you get much better at time management just by default, by taking the actual exams. I know we're sort of pressed on time, so that we're going to wrap this one up now. On behalf of Eric Corey Freed, my name is David Doucette. We will see you guys on the next episode of the ARE Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the ARE Podcast. Be sure to visit architectexamprep.com and check out our other podcast episodes, video tips, and the ARE blog. Remember to plan, practice, and pass.